It's about truth. The gospel of Jesus Christ is about truth. The truth of one man who commands all men everywhere to come to knowledge of the truth. And who is he? I am the truth, Jesus said. I am the truth. Paul prophesied that men would oppose the truth and wander into myths. Peter warned of those through whom the truth will be blasphemed. John commanded us to love, not in word only, but in truth. Jude demanded that we earnestly contend for the truth. So what if we got 7 guys together in a cage to talk about truth? 7 experienced pastors who love the truth more than their own opinion, or practice, or reputation. 7 men who believe that when iron sharpens iron, stuff catches fire, and that it's worth it. Chandler, Driscoll, Furtick, Glory, Noble, Platt, McDonald. Yeah, we hear the comments. What are you doing with that guy? How can you associate with him? We'll listen to you maybe, but not to those guys. Yeah, we've all heard the comments. Our response? What are you afraid of? It's time for brothers in Christ to act like brothers. No more sectarian Jesus, where brothers act like sisters in a catfight. No more sentimental Jesus, where brothers get all weepy and sing Kumbaya when the truth is on the line. And no more watered-down Jesus, where the approval of pagans comes before proclaiming the truth. We're brothers. We've never owned a pair of kid gloves and tiptoe around nothing. We want to talk about the elephant in the room. Let's hash it out. Let's go toe-to-toe, no holds barred. Not today. Let's do this like brothers for the sake of the gospel, for the truth. These are the conversations you never thought you'd hear. Welcome to the elephant room.
This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
Clarity, we have clarity. This is Wretched Radio. Yesterday was the Elephant Room 2 conference, an historic conference because of what we heard and what we did not hear. This is Wretched Radio. T.D. Jakes, is he a modalist or isn't he? You're going to have a varying degree of opinion. Some are going to say, yep, he gave a minimalist presentation on the theology of the Trinity. It's acceptable. Give him the benefit of the doubt. Other people are going to say it wasn't enough. And a third group of people are going to say it wasn't even close. We will share with you his confession. You can make that determination yourself. My encouragement, if you disagree with one of our conservative brethren on that, hold fire. Let's not start shooting in a circle because that's not the big issue. Because I'm telling you, there's different Christians are going to have different takeaways from his profession. But that's not the biggest issue. We learned much about the men of the Elephant Room Conference yesterday. And here's perhaps going to be the statement that is going to be very sad for some people. It's going to be sad. James MacDonald is different. The James MacDonald that perhaps you've been listening to for the last 10 years is a different James MacDonald. Please hear what I'm saying loud and clear. I am not saying the man is a heretic. I am not saying the man is not a brother. I am saying he's a different James MacDonald. The James MacDonald that perhaps made your heart soar in the past when you heard him. When he would say things like,
John Piper said, you want to suffer? Just go share Christ with every person on your street and press it to the point where they know that they're going to go straight to hell if they step out of this world without Christ. You'll suffer. He said, just call up all the apostate pastors in your area that aren't preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ and go ahead and challenge them to get on the biblical program. You'll suffer.
Now, that is a different James MacDonald. As best I can tell, with James MacDonald, his desire, they discussed this at one of the breakouts, his desire is to bring together those who have a centrality of the gospel and yet different methodology. It just doesn't matter as long as we are growing numerically. Now, that might be sort of a bare bones, perhaps a little bit harsh, but that's a different James MacDonald than the one that we are hearing at the Elephant Room Conference. He is moved from being bombastic in a way that we loved, sharp, clearly defined,
and preaching a prosperity gospel where Jesus wants you wealthy. It's sickening.
And yet, he was at a conference with a man who is one of the leaders of the prosperity gospel. He's moved. He's a different man. Now, you're going to have to figure out what to do with James MacDonald. Is the man a heretic? Absolutely not. Is he a different James MacDonald? Absolutely. He left the Gospel Coalition, an association of conservative theologians, to say, I am in harmony with T.D. Jakes, Stephen Furtick, Perry Noble. That is now the crowd that he has chosen to run with and identify himself with. If you will, I would like to suggest we've got a new movement of people. They're evangeliphants. This is not evangelicalism, historic. This is a new sort of evangelicalism, evangeliphants. And I think that is what we saw demonstrated yesterday. Not in whole, but at least in part, which makes the Elephant Room kind of frustrating. It was a pretty good a representation of some of the things that are bad in evangelicalism. And what we saw yesterday, in my opinion, and I think this is going to lead us into the big issue, you saw that there are two types of evangelical Christians. We're going to break it up into just two. There are confessional evangelicals. Do you know who those guys are? They're probably people like you. It's somebody like me who believes in theology being rich, profound, robust, deep, and worthy to be applied. And there's another camp of evangelicals that we're going to call contemporary evangelicals, where theology, yes, we can't be too crazy with it, but we've got some wiggle room, and this is the biggie, it's not that important. It's not that important. And that leads me to our third point, the takeaway from the Elephant Room Conference. The big issue, the major result of the Elephant Room was a demonstration of a modern-day downgrade controversy. Just like in Spurgeon's day. A watering down, there was a bit of, this is where it gets tricky. There was a bit of a watering down on the technicality of theology. Trinitarianism, that's kind of hard. My head's going to break open, so let's not go crazy here. That was a bit of a downgrade. The major downgrade was the role and the position and the application of theology. That we have a bare minimum statement of faith, the end. Now let's go put on a show and let's win them to Jesus. And methodology doesn't matter. And preaching about what we believe does not matter. And that is why when you take a look at the life of a Stephen Furtick or a T.D. Jakes, you can get a file cabinet orthodoxy, Trinitarian, gospel, justification, you name it, it'll be there. But you don't hear it coming out of the pulpit. You don't hear it or read it in their books. It is never preached to the people. And so the emphasis on the importance of theology yesterday just got ratcheted down. And I think there's a distinction. I believe that Trevin Wax writes about this rightly. Between confessional and contemporary evangelicals. I'll call them evangelicals and evangeliphants. That is what we saw happen yesterday, and that is where our clarity comes in. That we distinctly saw on display a group of people who hold to orthodoxy, T.D. Jakes maybe, hold to orthodoxy, but it's just not that big of a deal. And we need to stop arguing, we need to stop fighting, and we need to just get along. Let me share with you a demonstration of what that sounded like at the Elephant Room Conference.
When a man confesses his Trinitarianism, is he Trinitarian enough? And step away from me on that.
Okay, did you hear that? When somebody asks the question about somebody's Trinitarianism, are you Trinitarian enough? Do you really have your I's dotted? The early church fathers thought you better, or you won't go to heaven. James MacDonald says if you ask that question, step off. Now, does that make James MacDonald a heretic? No, it doesn't. It makes him a contemporary evangelical, not a confessional evangelical. It makes him an evangeliphant and not an evangelical. It is a downgrading on the importance of it. For this to perhaps have an impact, if it's not already on you, because the Trinitarian theology has been so downgraded for so long. Speaking to James White last night, Dr. James White, he said, Todd, you need to understand what's going on at the seminaries. The doctrine of the Trinity is not taught in systematic theology. It's taught in church history. And he's right. The doctrine of the Trinity, way down the totem pole, and you just heard it, step off. Now, imagine this. Imagine that this was about the doctrine of justification. Hey, these people who are uptight about grace alone, faith alone, do you have your I's dotted? Step off. What would you say to that? You'd go, whoa, time out here. Now, does that mean that they're a heretic? No, it doesn't mean that. But it means they don't understand its importance. And so it is with the doctrine of the Trinity. With James MacDonald and Mark Driscoll, it is a minimalist understanding that is required, necessary, and that's it, and we don't go beyond that. Otherwise, step off.
All right? That's when we begin, to me, to get into more of the nuance. What do you believe about the gifts? How Trinitarian are you? What do you believe about the role of women?
Now, hold it. I'm sorry, James. You know that wasn't fair. Being secondary and tertiary theologies on the same level as Trinitarianism. That was entirely a category switch, and that was not well done. Taking something where we can disagree, speaking in tongues, I don't, you do, I love you, you love me, but we're going to agree on the Trinity specifically and exactly. And if not, then we do have problems.
That's when we need to turn down, as you said, the rhetoric and let a man's confession, let a man's fruitfulness speak for itself.
Now hold it. That's pragmatism at its worst. If a man is being fruitful, growing a big church, for instance, doesn't matter really what he believes about the Trinity, really.
3,500 Americans leave the church every day. And I don't mean leave the church to go across town to the other church. I mean, I'm done with this. All right? Less than 20% of Americans attend church regularly. Only 15% of churches in the U.S. are growing numerically. Only 15%, and only 2% of those are growing by conversion growth.
Now, this is where I think James MacDonald has changed. That's pragmatism that you're hearing, and his diagnosis for the problem of church abandonment is too much of an emphasis, too much infighting, too much squabbling on theology. Now, I got to tell you, I don't know if he checked with George Barna on that, but I would like to suggest to you just the opposite is true if you want to take a look at numbers. Take a look at formerly conservative denominations, and each and every one of them that downgraded theology has seen a sinking ship. We've seen it with Presbyterians, not all of them, with Lutherans, not all of them, with Methodists, not all of them, but those who turn to the left have been shrinking. It is not a lowering of emphasis on theology that causes people to stay with the church. It causes them to leave the church. We've seen this historically. It is when conservative orthodoxy is promoted and lifted up, that is when we see, if you want to use the word revival, that is when we see growth. But now James MacDonald has a different view on it. It's as simple as that. Because he is a contemporary evangelical. And I think this is why so many people are discussing this issue with a great deal of intensity and upset. And I understand it. I really understand it. James MacDonald has not become a heretic. He switched dance cards. He used to be, he sounded confessional. a champion of orthodoxy, a defender of the faith. Now, hey, I'm going to preach it, but let's not get twisted over this. And that, to me, is the big issue. That's the big thing that is the takeaway from the Elephant Room Conference. A group of powerful, high-profile evangelicals have demonstrated this is contemporary evangelicalism, and if you are one of those confessional evangelicals, step off. I'm not drawing that line. You just heard that line drawn. And so now then, that leads us to our fourth point. What do we do? What do we do now? How do we respond to this? There will be a very strong tendency to talk about this and blog about this a ton. And that can be okay. It can. This is an important issue. But I don't know about you, I like it clear-cut and precise and defined, and let's move on. The end of the story, this is this, that is that. It's not that clear, and here's why. James MacDonald isn't a heretic, okay? He's not a heretic. But he's switched from being Gospel Coalition to being an Elephant Room guy. From saying, prosperity preachers, are you kidding me? To going and having dinner and doing a conference with one. That's just a radical change. What do we do with him? How do we act now? How are we going to treat him? How are we going to talk about him? What is at stake here? What are we supposed to do with this? That, to me, is the second big issue in all of this. T.D. Jakes, time is going to tell a little bit more. We'll get some more clarity on that. But we received crystal clear instruction and delineation between the difference between contemporary evangelical, low, minimalist theology, not spoken about and applied a ton, to confessional. The question becomes, how now shall we live? We'll try to tackle that next on Wretched Radio.